أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم وإذا رضى الله بقوم سوءا فلا مرد الله وما له من دونه من وال. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Arad, Surah number 13, ayah number 11. Verily, Allah will not change the condition of a people unless they change what is within themselves. But when Allah wills a people's punishment, there can be no turning back of it, and they will find besides Him no protector. Because my khutbah topic today is on this concept of nationalism. And there are so many different aspects to tackle when it comes to nationalism. So inshallah, I'll focus on a few and hopefully we'll have enough time to get through all of it, inshallah. But the issue is what nationalism does to us. I think a lot of Muslims seem to they underestimate or undermine what it can do to the heart of the Muslim. You see, when we see what's happening in Palestine, and you see what's happening and you feel the pain, it hurts. But if you are someone from, for example, from Sudan, now Sudan is also going through a very difficult turmoil. They're going through a very difficult depression. If you feel all of a sudden more close to the Muslims of Sudan than the Muslims of Palestine solely because of where you come from, that is a part of the sickness of nationalism. It's understandable that we have a natural affiliation to where we are from. We grew up in a certain country. We spoke the language. We ate the food. We grew up in the neighborhoods, the homes, the people. There's a natural affiliation in the human heart for this. But as a Muslim, we have to remember that the boundaries are drawn and that no Muslim is more important than another Muslim. Yes, some oppressions may be more difficult than others, but there is no such thing as, well, because he's from this country and I'm from that country, he takes a priority in my heart than the other Muslims. But unfortunately, most Muslims think like this without realizing it. Yes, most of us feel the pain of Palestine. But if you're from Pakistan, maybe you feel the pain of Kashmir more. Maybe if you're from Sudan, you feel the pain of Sudan more. If you're from Yemen, you might feel the pain of Yemen more. I mean, subhanAllah, this is a part of the sickness of nationalism that affects our hearts in such a way that we start to prioritize certain Muslims over something that they have no control over, something that has no real relevance. They have the La ilaha illallah, that's all that should matter. And Prophet ﷺ said that the ummah is like one body. The nation is like one body. If a pain were to inflict it, the entire body would feel it. The entire body would react. So, for example, if someone were to, hit me in the eye, my whole body would immediately react. My whole body convulses, my hand reacts, the whole body reacts to it. This is what an ummah is supposed to be like, how Prophet ﷺ is responding, that the Muslims will come in defense of the other Muslims, no matter what, no matter the differences. They still have La ilaha illallah, that's enough to defend the Muslims. And subhanAllah, yesterday evening was, I don't want to use names, but I think it's very obvious. There was the presidential debate yesterday. SubhanAllah, the whole thing is nothing more than a circus. But when the issue of Palestine came up, I don't know if anyone watched it. If you didn't watch it, I do not blame you. But it's like they're trying to compete who can kill more Muslims in Palestine. SubhanAllah. And I'm bringing this up because I'll bring it up again later, inshallah. But the reason this is a part of nationalism is because, unfortunately, we have Muslims who are still calling to vote for one of these candidates. But I'll get more into that later, inshallah. The thing is with nationalism is that it affects all parts of our life. It's not just these grand scale of things. It also affects on the individual level. For example, in marriage, this is probably the most common form of what we see more than anything. You say you have a daughter who's ready for marriage, and there's a brother who Islamically is very strong. He is an honest person. He comes to the masjid regularly. There are so many Muslims who can vouch for him. Maybe even the sheikh can vouch for him. Maybe he even has a decent job, alhamdulillah, although that is not really a requirement. As long as he's capable of fending for his wife, that's all that matters. But to look at the person's salary is not actually part of Islam. But My point is that he may have all these qualities, but because he comes from a different country than you automatically reject him. So common in today's Muslim ummah. Or we look at someone, even though we live here in America, where it is a mixed pot, as we call it, but some would say it's more of a tossed salad, because a mixed pot means there's more acceptance. But reality, tossed salad means that every part is individual. Every part is not a part of a whole, really. I mean, it's part of a whole, but it's more superficial. And so, in the case of nationalism, it's the Muslim's mind and heart is affected. That you reject someone who's good for your daughter solely because of where they come from. And again, this is not something they have control over. And even if they did, I mean, why does it matter? It's complete irrelevance. No one should feel ashamed where they come from. No one. No matter how bad your country is, or how bad your government is from, you were placed on a part of the earth because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed you there. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He dispersed us all around the earth so that we may meet one another. So how can we have this arrogance of thinking, oh, this brother, he's from Sudan, I'm Pakistani, I cannot allow a Sudani to marry my daughter. But this is unfortunately so common, and I don't think Muslims realize the effect this has long term. The chances of you getting a good marriage for your daughter after that is slim to none. Allahu Alam, but it becomes slim to none. There becomes a punishment for this as well. Because we do not have a right to reject someone if they have all the qualities that Prophet ﷺ described for a good marriage. And then on top of that, for the brother who works hard and he keeps with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he does his best, what is he supposed to do? He starts becoming disheartened. He becomes maybe even depressed. How am I going to be able to get married? Everyone I go to is rejecting me solely because of where I come from. So it becomes this sort of oppression in the morals of the society. The next thing you know, Muslims are still sticking with just where they come from. So they have to be marrying into their own groups, into their own ethnicities. This is just one aspect. Another aspect of nationalism affecting our hearts. There's an example I saw one time of this Muslim who's he was doing his salah, and as his his prayer rug, he was using the Egyptian flag. And this isn't merely, he had nothing else to use. No, he intentionally chose to use the Egyptian flag. He was even wearing Egyptian colors. And subhanAllah, it's just mind-boggling to me that Muslims don't understand how wrong this is. How wrong this is that you're using a symbol as part of your prayers. That you're praying on a symbol. What are you telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you do that? Understand, again, we come from certain countries. Whether you come from Egypt or wherever, let's say you come from Egypt, you grew up in the country. Right? You made friends, childhood friends from there. You grew up in a certain neighborhood. You're used to a certain lifestyle. You love that lifestyle. You love the food. You love the people around you. It's understandable that you have a love to where you come from. There's nothing wrong with this. The culturalism is not the issue. The problem is when you take it a step further. The problem is when you start to almost nearly worship your government, your country. And this is so common. Right? When we put the government above everything else, you come to the point where you're putting above Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is where it becomes so wrong. When you support a government knowing that they are oppressing your own brothers and sisters in the same country, let alone other countries, this is wrong. And every time I've had a conversation with people who have this, nationalism, whichever country they come from, I bring up this concept like, your government is tyrannical. It's oppressing Muslims. In Egypt specifically, if you are a practicing Muslim, you're automatically on the watch list. If you go to the Masjid for Fajr, you're automatically on the watch list. If you even dare to raise your voice, you're automatically arrested. SubhanAllah. This is the end result. You know the same thing in Saudi Arabia. Actually, in Saudi Arabia, after maybe you might probably know, in Hajj, a lot of Muslims pass away from a heat stroke. And may Allah give them the best the hereafter. This is a great death to pass away in Hajj, alhamdulillah. This is not a sad or tragic event per se. But With that said, there was a Muslim who actually spoke out against the Saudi government about this issue, saying that there could have been better conditions, and he was arrested by the government for just saying that they could have done a better job. That's all. He said they could have been issues, they could have done things to prevent this from happening, but they chose to ignore the conditions of the people, and just the people started to literally dehydrated, passed away. And all he said, he raised his voice on this, and he was arrested for it. So my point, going back to, is the fact that when we talk so highly of our country to come from, you're also talking about these tyrannical governments that are oppressing Muslims. What good can come from this? How can we do such a thing? How can we say such a thing? That we praise these governments who are actually oppressing Muslims. It is so difficult to know that these same governments are even causing more pain to the Muslims of Palestine. That the Muslims of Palestine are trying to look for exits. They're trying to receive aid. And the Muslim governments are the ones who are actually the main culprits in these matters, that they're preventing the aid to come to the Philistines. They're preventing the exit routes for the Philistines. And the thing is, the flag itself, it is merely a symbol of the government itself. I think people seem to we've gone to the idea of conflating the flag to the country, but the flag is really representative of the government, because all the time flags change, all the time, right? Every time there's a new uprising, there's a new flag to go with it, because they don't want the old flag there, because the old flag represents the oppression that they're fighting against. They don't use the same flag, they change the flag. This is very common in most of our countries. Not to mention, if you want to go back in history, the flags of the Arab nations, in case we haven't noticed, they're mostly relatively the same, with very few differences in where the stripe may be and how many stars or designs might be, but otherwise they are relatively the same color schemes included. And the reason for this is because when the Ottoman Empire fell down in 1920s, the British government had one person who created all the flags and the borders for the Muslims. One person. He was tasked with drawing our borders and then giving us a flag to represent for each of those borders. And the reason why it's all relatively the color scheme, mostly probably out of his laziness, that he wasn't going to create a separate flag for everyone. And so the Arab nations, they came and then they said, okay, this is going to be our flag, this is going to be our flag, this is going to be our flag. But subhanAllah, when we are raising these flags, we are raising the flags that the British gave us. The very people who destroyed our ummah, who destroyed our khilafah, and we are raising it with pride and we are doing sujood on it. I mean, subhanAllah, this is a sickness of the nationalism. That we support the very governments knowing the evils they do. We justify it because we think it's better for our people, quote unquote, our people. But as Muslims, our people is the Muslims, no matter where they are. There is no my people versus your people in Islam. Now, going back to the point I made earlier about this presidential debate, and the Muslims are calling for voting. SubhanAllah, I really didn't think I would be seeing that, but yet here we are, where we are seeing Muslims who are still saying that we should throw our votes. And I have been relatively quiet on this issue for many years. I've never agreed with the idea of voting. I've never voted myself, alhamdulillah, and this is my opinion only. But now, when one candidate literally has been nicknamed with the word genocide in his nickname, and it is a genocide of the Muslims. If we call it genocide of the Palestinians, yes, there are Christian Palestinians that are also suffering, but the Muslims are being targeted. The Muslims are being targeted. Do not forget that. Muslims are being targeted. When they intentionally write messages in Hebrew that make fun of Islam, make fun of Prophet ﷺ, this is a target against Islam. When they are targeting Masjid al-Aqsa, this is a target against Islam. So make no mistake, yes, the Christians and whoever else may be amongst the Palestinians, they may also be receiving some level of the same oppression, but the oppression is directed to the Muslims. So we must keep in mind that this isn't the plight of the Palestinians, this is the plight of the Muslims for us. This is our issue, is the issue of the Muslims. And when one presidential candidate is literally been nicknamed genocide, That's in his nickname now. And it's a genocide of Muslims. And the other candidate is saying, I can kill even more Muslims. That I'll make sure that even more Muslims be killed next time. If I was president, I would cause even more oppression against Muslims. It's not exact words, but that's exactly what they are implying. And we are saying, well, we should pick up the lesser of two evils. SubhanAllah, what have we come down to? We are not even forced to vote. No one is requiring us to do this. If you were in an area where they were putting a gun to your head or forcing you to do something haram just so that you vote, that's a different issue. But this is the issue of lesser of two evils in Islam has only been when you are forced to pick one of the two evils. When you're forced to. There is no requirement. There is no mandate that you're required to choose between one of these two people or any person. You are not required to do this. And yes, subhanAllah, I'm seeing Muslims on the pulpit, on the minbar of Prophet who are calling to vote for people here in America, here in Richmond. Muslims who are saying we need to vote for XYZ candidate because we need to make our voices heard. SubhanAllah, I believe I can make my voice louder through this khutbah. I can make my voice louder through my talks in the community. I can make my voice louder by just talking with my co-workers, my friends, my family members. That is making my voice louder and heard. Even a protest will do a better job of making a voice heard than casting a ballot. How can you possibly say that my voice is being heard? You tell them, I only have one condition, stop killing the Muslims. And that issue has never been resolved in the 20 plus years of candidates we've had. 20 plus years. Every single one of them has had blood of the Muslims on their hands. And yet we still, every 4 years, push Muslims to vote. I apologize if I'm just extra passionate about this, but this year I think I'm especially sick of it. Especially knowing what's happening in Palestine, and we're still pushing on this agenda. Why do we feel the need to tell Muslims to vote? It's because Muslims, especially the ones who, when we come from other countries, we feel the need to assimilate. And this need for assimilation is what causes nationalism to affect our hearts. So now we have nationalism of the country we came from, and now the nationalism of the country we're in now. And make no mistake, to make things clear, I'm not making an enemy of this country or the people of this country or the people around us. That is not my intention. What I am saying solely is that we recognize the major issues. And it's not just us. Even many of the non-Muslims, they are no longer supporting either of these candidates because of what's happening. Of course, yes, there are still people who are supporting these candidates. But many Americans have turned away from this. We're not even Muslim. We're not calling anyone our enemy. We are recognizing that this is an issue, and we do not need to be a part of that issue. We do not need more blood of our Muslim brothers and sisters on our hands anymore. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه. Now we talked about this sickness of the nationalism. The Prophet ﷺ himself, when asked about nationalism, he said, leave it, it is rotten. The Prophet ﷺ almost never describes anything like this. This is a hadith in Bukhari. So for him to use such harsh language in such a short few words, to leave it, it is rotten. That tells you how lowly he thought of nationalism, how much he despised it. And today, we see no issue with it. We have no problem with it. We reject good marriages because of nationalism, and we see no problem with it. Say, oh, this person, I can't speak with their parents in my same language. They won't understand our cultural practices. I mean, this subhanAllah is such a weak, nonsensical argument. And we know that, but we don't want to admit that. The reality is we just don't like the person where they come from, and that's it. And we judge Muslims because of this, and this is a sickness in our hearts that we do such a thing. And because of nationalism, we support tyrannical governments. We support oppression against other Muslims, and now we're even calling for more oppression against Muslims. This is what nationalism does to our hearts. The question is, what can we do about this sickness? For every sickness, there's a cure in Islam. So what is a cure for nationalism, sickness? And it's very easy to just say, come back to the Quran Sunnah. But the reality is, in my personal observation, there are many even religious Muslims who have the sickness of nationalism. Muslims who are praying in the masjid, regularly praying in the masjid, Fajr and Isha. There are Muslims who are doing khutbahs. There are Muslims who are imams and all levels of their religiousness and all levels of their iman, and they still have the sickness of nationalism. It is a major flaw of their hearts. So saying coming back to the Quran Sunnah is not enough. Telling them to look at the death of the Muslims overseas is not enough. So what is it? The answer is very simple. It's a whole other topic. But the answer is Khilafah. That's it. Khilafah. A one ummah under one governing body. One Khalifa to rule the Muslims. We had this 100 years ago. And even when the Khilafah itself was corrupt, when it was actually causing oppression, we were still one body. We still did not have the nationalism problem in our hearts. Because even in the Khilafah, there may be nation states, but the overarching, the overbearing is the flag of Islam, the loyalty, the allegiance to the Khalifa. And thus, the Muslims cannot be oppressed from outside forces as long as the Muslims are one under one body. But trying to convince Muslims that what we need is a Khilafah is a whole another issue. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم في العالمين انك حميد مجيد. Ya Allah, please help strengthen our iman and make us and our families among the mu'mineen and muttaqeen. Ya Allah, please guide us to the right path. And if you have guided us, please keep us on the right path. Ya Allah, please protect us from the fitna of Dajjal. Ya Allah, please protect us from the oppression all around the world. Ya Allah, please help ease the suffering of the Muslims around the world. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون. أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله من حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamualaikum brothers and sisters, mashallah, and salam to our Imam, mashallah. I'll be very quick, I hope many of you have to leave, just briefly listen to what you're saying, inshallah. Jazakallah, for some people who are aware of it, that we just finished with Hajj and the Eid al-Adha, the festival of that. And this year we didn't do it in the back, but we did it in the beginning of the farmer. And then, mashallah, Allah Ta'ala gave us a success that we were able to complete that. Last week we were trying to get help one of the family who was in a really, there's extreme weather. It's so hot that the children especially and the older people, it's a very hardship. So we gathered the amount from our congregation last Jummah, and we were able to buy a solar fan because sometimes they don't have the electricity all the time, and they were able to buy it, and I'm going to continue to monitor that. MashaAllah, Allah Ta'ala bless the people who gave us the money, and we sent it to them, and they were able to buy it. But there are other family, of course, and we continue to monitor that. That one family have a newborn, but so hot, and the men of the house don't have a job because of the extreme. It's in a remote Pakistan, and it's so hot in many areas. And some places have a rain, but some places have not received any rain. So it's very difficult inside the house without the electricity and without that. But this solar fan, it has a solar battery and everything. We were able to put together last week, and Jazakallah khair for all the people, and Allah Ta'ala bless them that we were able to send it so far away. And we continue to gather the. If you are able to want to send something, inshallah, give it to me, and inshallah, I'll take care of them, inshallah. The food and medicine and other things which they regularly require there. So Allah Ta'ala bless you for giving that, and Allah Ta'ala multiply and give you the reward for that, because you never know how much it multiplies that in terms of the currency and in terms of Jazakallah khair. May Allah Ta'ala reward you for that, brother. MashaAllah. So Allah Ta'ala bless it, inshallah, that whatever we can give it, inshallah, multiplies in a very significant way. We have been doing it for a long time, and only recently we are asking the community to contribute to that, because it helps that many of the people give it from their pocket, and they send it by Zelle, or they write a check and they put in our zakat
and then put in the memo family, and I know it's for that, or you can give me a cash in my hand. So inshallah I can provide that, whatever their needs are. So Allah Ta'ala bless you for listening, and I hope I see you again, inshallah, all of you. Assalamu alaikum.